Hello everybody, today we're going to talk about hard drives and the huge elephant in the room when it comes to picking one. The elephant that people try to work their way around, push their way around, climb over, go under, anything but mention it. And that is cost. It's okay to say no, SSDs are the best, but if you want the best and you want the speed, you're paying roughly £300 or just under that for a 2 terabyte drive, which is hugely expensive. So we can't get around that elephant. That is the elephant in the room. And that is the reason this video needs to be made. Now, admittedly, is it the fourth gen, SSDs, they're really fast, really good. If you can afford it, fantastic. But most of us, if we're getting an SSD, we're going for the third generation because it's a bit cheaper, the performance is still quite good. Right, but you're talking like 2,000 megabits per second, difference in read-write. So there's a massive difference in performance. However, where should you stick an SSD? Well, first of all, right, you don't stick it there. Right, you put it on your C drive where you put it. Well, you want to boot from it basically. You want your Windows to be on it because there's a lot of files that every program on your operating system will use, and they're nearly always on C drive. So you put it on C. That will speed up everything. Absolutely everything. So how much space do you need? Well, you only need 500 gigs, so you can partition it. Right? So if you've got a 1 terabyte one, which is relatively cheap and PCI Express free, then you just half it, 50-50. That way, if you need to reinstall Windows, you can format the C drive, and the other drive will be all right. D drive will be all right. So you don't lose anything. Also, you only keep Windows and one-shot programs like your video players or WinZip and things like that on C, nothing else. Right, all your main programs go on D drive, E drive, that kind of thing. So they're protected against operating system failures and things like that and virus infections to a degree, not a lot, to a little degree. Right, because a virus will target the operating system, usually. But some viruses will sit in memory and infect every exe. I mean, there was a Win95 virus did that many years ago, and it spread like crazy. So yeah, 500 gig is what you need for an operating system. So you've got your SSD for Windows, and now we will look at the hard drives. Now, we're going to pick out Western Digital because they're a brand I use all the time. They're a brand I've never had an issue with, and I do recommend them. Now, Western Digital, they do a number of different colours. But the only ones you need to be really concerned about are blue and black. But the red ones, they're for ready NAS drives or network drives, that kind of thing. You connect them to your network or your router. You access it via your Wi-Fi or your RJ45 cable. They're not built into your system. They're separate from your system. And then you've got the enterprise drives, which seem to be like blacks, but a little bit quieter, so they don't make as much noise. Right. The red ones, what I talked about earlier, they're kind of like supposed to be more anti-vibration because you get drives stacked and the vibration builds up. Apparently, it damages them. So they've got more padding more features to stop them vibrating. But the blues and the blacks, they're pretty much identical in performance and stats from what I've seen. The difference is the warranty. On the warranty, you might get like 2 years for the blue, and 5 for the black. That's a sign of the confidence Western Digital have in that product. Now, when I put some cheap drives into my Readiness, right, they lasted 12 years, but that Readiness wasn't on all the time. Right? It was only on when I needed it. So, that's why it lasted 12 years. If you put it in a PC, then 2 years might be about right. But as a general rule, Western Digital drives just keep on going. I've only ever had one fail on me. And that was in the Readiness, and I think that because it got banged about when I moved. But the blacks, you think they'd be high performance drives, but no, they're the same speed roughly as the Western Digital according to blues according to Western Digital's own webpage and download specs. So I think it's a question of higher quality components, so they last longer. Now, if you care about your gaming, you don't want to lose anything, you'll get a black, right? Because it's simply more reliable. And also, the other thing to remember is if you're looking at the Western Digital drives themselves and the difference between, say, the smallest one, the largest one, there's a sweet spot for performance. It's not the 8 gig and it's not the 500 meg, well, it's not the 8 terabyte and it's not the 500 meg. It's everything between 1 terabyte and 6 terabyte. That's the performance sweet spot. Right, so you go for them, and somewhere in the middle there, you'll get the best performance. Now, in the old days, RPM mattered. It not only meant the drive probably wouldn't last as long if it went faster, right? But its seek times and read times were all faster on the faster spinning thing. But that doesn't seem to be the case anymore, unless Western Digital stats are a bit misleading. But as a general rule, I'd still assume it is. And if you wanted, faster read and write times and stuff, and seek times, I'd go for a faster RPM drive. But it doesn't indicate that in the stats. It doesn't say that'll make a difference. But anyway, it says, how does that affect your gaming? Well, it snaps. It's you click on an icon, bang, it's there, there. In 95 days, that used to be the case with SCSI drives. Now there's so much bloatware in Windows, it takes a bit longer to load up. So to get that snappiness, you need an SSD. Right, but it still loads quite quickly. Now, why would you want a traditional hard drive over an SSD? SSDs are vastly expensive. SSDs like this fourth gen, you'll pay something like £300 or just under, right, for for a really fast top of the line hard drive. And remember, it's not a proper hard drive. It doesn't spin like a normal hard drive does. It's like a memory stick, really. It behaves like memory, and it remembers what you put on it. But they're going to be written to so many times. But they do have the same lifespan as a hard drive, roughly, year for year. So they're very similar. Difference is with them though, you can't fill them all the way. If you fill them all the way, then the lifespan reduces rather quickly. So you've got to leave about 25%, empty on an SSD in order to actually guarantee that it'll last a while, because it'll move things about, right? But you've got a limited number of read and writes on them. So if it can't read and write to different blocks, it'll read write to the same block. And eventually that block will be marked out of service and the drive will appear to get smaller and smaller and smaller until there's nothing left. Because if you're just dropping things on these drives and then you're just reading from it constantly, maybe your MP3 collection, then it won't be a problem. It'll probably last forever, unless till heat damages it, that is. Right, but it says, as a general rule though, hard drives, SSD, 25% empty. So if you get a 1 terabyte, you're only really using 750 meg. On a traditional hard drive, that's not much of a problem because it doesn't work that way. It spins. So it's got a different set of problems where SSDs don't spin. But anyhow, the fourth generation ones are lightning fast but hugely expensive. It makes more sense to go for the third gen because the third gen are still quite good, but at vastly cheaper prices. And remember, usually if you get above 1 terabyte, you're paying a lot of money. So if you've got a gaming computer with just SSDs in it, right, and you're using the M.2 SSDs, then you're getting the best performance, but you've probably only got like a 2 terabyte system at most, unless you've got a motherboard like mine where you can fit 4 sticks in, and then you get 4 cheap sticks, which will be 4 terabytes. Right, if you've got loads of money, you go for 2 terabytes, then yeah, but you'd be paying for it. It might be the equivalent of buying a new computer in some cases, just for the SSDs, because it cost about the same. So there is a sweet spot there as well, and I'd say it's 1 terabyte PCI Express 3 for most people is that sweet spot where the SSDs are worth getting until the prices drop for the better ones. So in each case, there's benefits and disadvantages. And I think as a gamer, you need to understand, right, that if you're going to install massive games on a hard drive, an SSD is going to fill up very quickly. Right, so you don't want to be filling up your SSDs with just games. This is where the normal hard drives come in. The normal hard drives have got massive amounts of space, loads of space for everything. And if you're doing video work like I am, you need that space. You need that performance. And you can't really get it with SSDs because they're too expensive and too small. So you still have to buy a traditional hard drive. And this is where the blues and the blacks come in for Western Digital. Because with them, you buy, say, a 6 terabyte one, bang, you've got the space sorted. But that doesn't mean you don't use the SSD for anything else. You could still use the SSD to put your favourite game on, the one you play the most. And whilst it's installed on the SSD, it will snap. It will just be lightning fast. You just put all the other games on the larger drive. You put all your mods on the larger drive. You put all your files, your video files on the larger drive. And I think that's the way you should work it. Also, every time you upgrade your computer, you should rotate your drives. C drive might be perfectly alright. Move it to D. Buy a new drive for C. That way you've got a brand new drive that's going to do the heavy load. Now if you've got SSDs, that means basically you'd need space to move your SSD across. if you've only got a cheap motherboard, you might only have one slot for an SSD, you know, an M.2 drive. And if we just talk quickly, you know, this is the standard SATA-free SSDs are limited in speed to the speed of the SATA-free port. So they're not as fast as the M.2 SSDs. So if you've got any of them, you'll get a boost over a hard drive, but it's nowhere near the same boost you'd get from an M.2 SSD. So just keep that in mind. But as a general rule, SATA-free ports on motherboards, you get about 6 to 8 of them, and minimum 4, I'd say, right? So that's 4 hard drives, right? If you've got a cheap motherboard, you've got 4 traditional hard drives versus, you know, one M2, then you really got no choice but to think, you know, one M2 for the hard drive, I mean for the operating system, and the rest goes on the gaming, you know, the big normal drives for gaming. You pretty much made up your mind. If you've got a better motherboard like I have, you've got a few more choices than that. I mean, I could keep adding 2 TB SSDs, maybe 3rd gen to that, end up with 8 gig. Right, perfect for me at lightning fast speed. It'd be the perfect computer, but it would cost me a fair whack. You're talking about £200 each at Gen 3 for that kind of thing, speed, I think, and you'd be lucky, you know, for 4 of them. That's about 800 quid for hard drives. Whereas you can probably get an 8 TB drive for 300 quid, black maybe, you know. So it is expensive going the SSD route, no doubt about it. Anyway, I hope this video, you know, well, I hope you learned something from it, and I'll see you in the next one. And remember, gaming tags are just a gimmick. If you don't believe me, this is a gaming can of Pepsi, and I'm about to game with it. Here you go, I win. See you later.